Rob here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the Moving On article from the Big Issue, 25th Anniversary Edition, October 17th to 25th, 2016. We're looking at the page 32 and 33 double page spread, and we're also looking at the page 35, third page of this. As you can see, I photoshopped them all together into one image to make life easier. But what we've definitely got is a double page spread and a third page. Verso recto page, obviously. So, what do we got here? Right, again, same things we've talked about in the other videos. We need to talk about Roland Barthes' semiotics theory, Svetlana Todorov's narratology theory. We need to think about genre theory and Steve Neal, structuralism, Claude Levi-Strauss. Any elements of postmodernism, Jean Baudrillard. But more specifically, this is about the representation. So we need to think about Stuart Hall, David Gauntlet, feminist theory like Elizabeth Van Zuren and Bell Hooks, Judith Butler, theories about ethnicity and post-colonialism from Paul Gilroy. That's about it, really, I think, on these ones. Okay, so what we've got here is, let's start with the narratology, the Svetlana Todorov element. This is called Moving On. Notice it's using the same Century Gothic font that's part of a house style. Some big issue vendors stay with us for a long time, as long as they need us. Others use the magazine as a stepping stone to move on to a new start. Here are some of our great success stories. So let's think about how that relates to narrative theory. We have the equilibrium at the beginning. Someone has a particular life. There's a disruption. Something bad happens to them, and that ends up with them having to live on the streets. They become homeless. That's the disruption. It's the enigma. It's going to be how they're going to get out of this situation. They then fight against this disruption by becoming a big issue vendor, and eventually they resolve that situation and have a new equilibrium, which in itself kicks off a new chapter of their life and starts a new narrative. And that's inherent in all these little stories, telling of these success stories, telling of stories of how, selling the big issue has made a big difference in the lives of individuals, and it's personalizing it. It's taking something abstract, this idea that homelessness is bad and that, but selling the big issue can help. And it says, well, look, yeah, it does help. Here are examples of people who have succeeded. And I think that message is important, not just to the people who have purchased the big issue and are reading it and saying, oh, look, well, my money has done some good. I mean, you can think of that in similar circumstances to the WaterAid advert for Tide's Got What We Want, not Tide's Got What We Want, the Claudia Sing Sunshine on a Rainy Day, where they try to counter the typical stereotype of, the suffering African that you see in, the generic characteristics of most charity adverts. Instead, try to challenge that with something more positive. And this is what this is doing too, exactly the same way. It's trying to present a positive outcome for its vendors. So again, it's challenging those stereotypes that, homeless people are useless, that they're the bottom of society, that they're the dregs, that they are, lost causes. So, think about how it's challenging those stereotypes. What's the first things we want to think about? Think about the narratology. Think about the semiotics. How are they showing that this is the case? What kind of imagery, what kind of text are they using that tells us that things have changed for these people? We can also think of the theories of identity for David Gauntlet, that the idea the media provides us with tools or resources we need to construct our identities. And I think the audience for this spread is not just the people who bought the magazine, but the people who are selling the magazine. Because let's face it, if you've got a pile of big issues, you're going to read them, even if you're going to sell them. And they can see themselves in these articles. They can say, yeah, I'm down on my luck. Yeah, I'm homeless. But, you know, these people have done it. These people have succeeded. These people have turned selling the big issue into a success story. That could be me. So they provide aspirational role models and ideal selves to the vendors. And, of course, the actual reader of the magazine, these are inspirational stories. These are rags to riches stories. This is the Cinderella story. People have gone from the lowest to the low, the homeless, to someone who's succeeded. Even if it's only in quite, you know, modest ways. Also, in some cases here, there's going to be issues of, you know, intersectionality. So, you know, homelessness is an issue of social class, isn't it? But it's also an issue of gender and ethnicity. So to be black and a woman and homeless is going to put Marvina Newton here as very much a victim of intersectionality, as is the same with Joel Hobson here. So we could bring in Bell Hooks and, of course, Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term into this as well, can't we? So, what have we got? What are some of these stories? You know, general things for photo credits are down here. So we have the same person's taking all these photographs. They all tend to be London. I mean, that's what the magazine started. It's a bit London-centric if you've got a criticism of this, but it's the big issue south, I assume. Maybe the big issue north was different. But again, in the borders, gutters between all the different sections, folios down here, running department heads. Department head there, as you can see, it's got the title of the spread here, and then the department head there telling us what this relates to. It's got intertextuality here because it's referencing the website, right? Byline of the person who wrote all this. Obviously transcribing the interviews of these people into the words. More success stories at bigissue.com, so it's carrying on the story, so it's almost like cross-platform, cross-media, transmedia storytelling, I guess, if you will. And it's also, again, convergence, isn't it? Because you're looking at the different web platforms. So, you know, this brings into us your audience theory, so it's called David Hayes-McGulch. I couldn't think of his name for a second there. Yeah, so it's got David Hayes-McGulch. Again, we've got the red colour being shown all the way through the magazine because the red bib of the sellers, the vendors, the big issue. It's that sort of like house style, isn't it? So, again, the Century Gothic sans serif display font for the names of each person and what they do. Body text, and in this case the deck or the stand first, or what you want to call it, that is in a different serif font. I don't know, Lux Times New Romanish, I don't know what it is exactly. Some of these articles are separated out in print boxes. Don't know why. Probably because this story spreads like this, so that follows on from that, and it's to separate that from that, I guess. Because it would look weird if you had text up there and then another one underneath it, perhaps. I don't know. Anyway, Stan Burridge, what to say here? Healthcare champion for homeless people. We've got Marvina Newton, she's a youth charity boss. Owen Bailey is a gambling campaigner. Karen Bugasul, I don't know how to pronounce that, is a refugee charity manager. Mark Dempster is a high street therapist. Terry Gore is a housing charity manager. So it's interesting how many of these success stories are people who've gone on to caring professions. People who are helping other people who are in similar situations. So they've risen themselves out of their poverty, out of their homelessness, and now they want to use their privilege to be able to help others. Now, let's start with the first one. Stan Burridge, healthcare champion for homeless people. Stan is an expert on homelessness through his own experience. He stepped on the streets of London and sold the big issue outside the old BBC headquarters in West London during the late 1990s. Quotation marks. Selling the big issue, I learned I had the ability to get people talking. Not only talking, but listening as well, he says. I got to hear about other people's lives, marriages, divorces. It led me to where I am today. Now in his early 50s, Stan is a project leader at Pathway, a charity that works within the NHS to get homeless people and other marginalised groups better healthcare. I get a real sense of pride when I'm one of those people who helps get a job or when they make a massive step forward in other areas of their lives, Stan says. I get the same feeling that the Big Issue has when one of their flock smashes through the glass ceiling and begins to fly. The Big Issue opened the door to me and countless others. So again, it's talking about how his mission is similar to that of the magazines. That he is, following on from that. Then we got Marvina Newton. She's sort of like the main star of this. She's got her picture spread across both of those. Why her of all people? Is it because she's a person of colour? Is it because she's got the most colourful picture in her red top and her ethnic jewellery against this graffiti background? Is it because she's, possibly the most attractive of the people? Maybe it's all of those. Anyway, Marvina Newton, 30, began sleeping rough on the streets of East London when she was a teenager. She decided to sell the Big Issue to earn an income before finding a job as a waitress and beginning to build her career. Marvina now lives in Leeds and is a part-time biomedical technician. She's taken a career break to focus on a charity, Angel of Youth, helping disadvantaged children. Marvina's aim was to stop other teenagers ending up in the predicament she found herself in over a decade ago. Whether they're white, black or whatever, I can see a little bit of me in them, she says. No one's going to save you but you. You are the superhero in the story. That's what I got from the Big Issue. The only person I had was myself. I could have chosen to be a victim, but I chose to sell the many Big Issue magazines as I could. So again, it's tying into that idea of a hand up, not a handout. About self-motivating, about doing something to help yourself. So it's again promoting that message. Owen Bailey, gambling campaigner. Owen, 34, began selling the Big Issue in Canterbury in 2006 when he was still struggling with gambling addiction, hooked on the high street bookmakers' digital roulette games called fixed odds betting terminals, FOBTs. After the Big Issue helped turn his life around, Owen began campaigning for regulation of FOBTs and now works with many organisations to combat gambling addiction. Selling the Big Issue gave me some stability back, he recalls. I realised I was getting the chance to run my own little business. It was the moment things began to change for me. Again, notice how he's got this placard, literally a sign of protest. Notice how many of these people are making direct eye contact with us. Helps to personalise it. Karen here, I won't butcher her name again. Refugee charity manager. Carol, 42, sold the Big Issue in central London back in the early days of the magazine from 1992 to 1995. Using it to gain some structure in a chaotic time, she applied to go to university in Lancaster, got a degree in social policy, and went on to work with refugees struggling with homelessness. Today she's a project manager for Nottingham Arimathea Trust, finding houses for destitute asylum seekers and refugees in the city. Selling the Big Issue helped me get my self-esteem, a bit of structure in my life, and I met some very good people doing it, Karen recalls. The people I work with now find themselves in desperate trouble, and I can relate and empathise with them because as a young woman I went through the same things. So there's a lot of things here about empathy for people who were in the same situation as they were and wanted to pay it forward, I guess, to sort of like pay back something to help others who were in the same situation as they were, to give them a hand up. Terry Gore, housing charity manager. Terry, 51, used to sell the Big Issue in Wimbledon, as now manages Canterbury-based housing charity Catching Lives. I started selling the Big Issue after I'd been sleeping rough for 2 years, he says. It started giving me back my self-esteem. I'd become very isolated, but selling the magazine meant I had to talk to people. That was the start of developing interpersonal skills that are key to the work I do now. It was the start at the root of the streets. Again, it's this idea of, people being isolated, being outsiders. They are other. They are, the forgotten people of society. And that, give, the manifesto of the magazine, to give them a hand up, is an important part in helping these people out. So those people all are all in, charity and kind of style jobs, I guess. Then there are the chefs. So we've got Ian Duff of Florian Charbonneau. So Ian Duff, chef. Ian Duff, 49-year-old chef, combines selling the Big Issue in Bath with running his own catering business, run as a social enterprise. Duff's Cooks has even taken on other big issue vendors to help with the cooking and waitering roles. Ian says that selling the magazine helped make it possible, and he now gives talks explaining the entrepreneurial aspect of the big issue. People are amazed. Not only we're making an honest living, but we're trying to move on from homelessness. Over here, Florian. Florian, 47, used to sell the big issue outside organic supermarket Whole Foods in Glasgow. Then at the end of 2014, he landed a job as a chef in the shop's cafe. In 2012, he moved from the UK to the UK from Romania for a fresh start. But when his newsagent business collapsed, he lost everything. Selling the magazine outside Whole Foods led to a full-time job as a prep cook and kitchen porter. It showed me I'm not afraid to work hard, and when they recognised that, he explained, I'm very grateful to the big issue for the support over the 2 years I was selling it. Now, of course, those two articles then follow on to the Soggy Bottom Bakers thing in the other article. It seems like this is a common route for homeless people, perhaps. Maybe it's because they, if you're used to hunger, being a chef, it may be something you dream of, I don't know. Then there are the creative types. Joe Adamson, painter. Joe was known in Glasgow for many years as the singing vendor, cheering everybody up with songs about the magazine. Registered blind? Well, that's another thing. There you go. You want to talk about, intersectionality. She may not be a person of colour, but to be female, blind and homeless is a kind of intersectionality, right? Also quite amazing that she's registered blind and an artist. Anyway, Jo stopped selling the big issue because of the deteriorating sight, but she's now thriving at her first love, painting. She exhibited at Cass Art in Glasgow and set up her own online Etsy store to sell her work. I don't do depressing pictures, I do cheerful ones, she said. Since I left the big issue, I don't think I could draw anymore because I'm almost blind, so I'm very proud of what I've done. Then we've got John Brown over here, children's book illustrator. John, 37, sold the magazine in Bath until the end of 2015 when he finished working a series of drawings for the children's book called Katie and the Rainbow Mermaid. John had painted a colourful dragon on the window of Waterstones where he sold the big issue, which caught the eye of the author John West, who offered him the work in his book. The biggest thing is confidence, says John. Got to be talking to people. Give me the push to talk to them about my work. So there's the creative types, right? That's another thing they're saying, that it's trying to show you there's a variety of different people out there, that they're not purely defined by their homelessness, that they've got other talents as well. Vivian Askland, tour guide. Norwegian-born Viv was sleeping rough under London Bridge before she came to the big issue. She sold the magazine from the start of the 2000s till 2010 when she found a new role as London tour guide. Part of the award-winning Sock Mob's Unseen Tours team, Vic takes tourists on a journey through the hidden parts of the city. When I started selling the magazine, it gave me a lot of confidence, says Viv. I realised how much I actually like speaking to new people, and that's what I've moved on from to do with the tours. Again, it's confidence is one of the things they keep coming back to, don't they? And then finally down here, we've got Joel Hobson. Oh, I've got two more of me. Joel Hobson, 7 years ago, Joel was sleeping rough in London. Today, the 27-year-old works for a top city law firm, Freshfields. He said the turning point was when he walked through the doors of the big issue in 2009. I felt like someone was on my side for the first time in a while. After a corporate placement for Freshfields, he got a job in the firm's billing department. The big issue turned my life around massively. The good thing is they gave the vendors the tools to help themselves. We'll come back to that in a minute. And then Mark Dempster down here, Harley Street therapist. Former addict, drug dealer and prisoner, Mark Dempster turned his life around with the big issue's help. After selling the magazine in London in the mid-90s, he went on to become a qualified therapist. The 51-year-old now treats patients at his practice in Harley Street in London. He hails his time selling the magazine as the catalyst for his recovery. It felt empowering. Back to that again. It gave me the platform to put drugs and crime behind me, Mark recalls. I remember one day the big issue office, a pal of mine called Paul, another vendor, came in and said he was going through a detox program. I remember thinking, yeah, I can do it. I can do it too. It was an important turning point, and the big issue was a very big part of that process. Harley Street is a street in London where all of the top private practice firms are. They are the world's leading doctors. If you have got a practice on Harley Street, you are the best of the best. People come from all over the world to Harley Street to get medical treatment. this is paid for medical treatments, not the NHS, although many of the doctors who are on Harley Street also do stuff for the NHS for free. So, look at his signifiers of success here. You know, his motorcycle, his leather, well, you know, he looks casual, he doesn't look very posh, but, you know, the motorcycle shows that he's made it. He's got, you know, got the money to buy something like that. Look at Joel down here. Look at the way they put him on this plinth on the north bank of the Thames. But it makes him look like a statue. It makes him look like, you know, somebody we have celebrated from times past for being heroic. But he's also wearing this suit that signifies his success. He's looking off into the distance, like he's looking into his positive future. But he's also in the position of a runner, as if he's about to start sprinting. As if, you know, his life's turned around now and now he's in the race. Now he's actually, you know, he's on the starting line. Again, it's the London iconography too, got the London Eye there, for example. Showing this success because London's, you know, the city of dreams in this country, isn't it? What else have we got? You know, showing off their art. This is quite good as well. Shows the creativity, look. So we've got a variety of different success stories here. And it's showing us that, you know, the kinds of people who become homeless for all sorts of reasons that might not be their fault, that might be victims of, you know, unseen or unknown circumstances that were beyond their control. It's showing us that this could happen to any of us. There, but for the grace of God go I, as the old phrase goes. You know, and these people did let it defeat them and did help them turn their lives around and become successes. So, you know, they are, as we said before, this is, you know, we are used through cultivation theory, you know, George Gerbner, we are used to seeing a very limited number of depictions of homeless people. We see the same tired stereotypes being repeated again and again and again. And one of the motivations of the big issue is to counter those stereotypes, to give us new images, more positive images of homeless people. And that's their dominant position. These people are not, you know, just a moral panic. They're not folk devils. We're living in a world that's very hostile to homeless people. Look at the homeless, anti-homeless people architecture. You know, park benches on benches in the streets impossible to lie full length on because they've got armrests in them. They're not for resting your arms on. They're to stop homeless people sleeping on them. You know, the bits outside high street supermarket stores have got like pointy tiles on the floor. Why? So homeless people can't sleep on them. Right? We've got this very hostile environment to the homeless, and as a result of the 2008 financial crash, you know, the number of people sleeping rough on the streets has skyrocketed because those social safety nets that were needed to help these people are increasingly disappearing. Poverty is becoming worse. But there can be success stories, and this is what this magazine is trying to promote. It's trying to give people the ability to drag themselves out of poverty. And if you are a vendor of the big issue and you see these stories, you can think to yourself, yeah, they can do it, I can do it. It gives them aspirational role models to aspire to. So here you can bring in Stuart Hall, and you can bring in David Gauntlet and talk about these kind of, you know, more diverse representations that we can have today. What else can we talk about? This idea of these coloured banners, these are called, these boxes, the sort of like stepped design around this, very trendy at the time this magazine came out. We've got a very kind of like flat design as opposed to skeuomorphic design, so everything's got a very two-dimensional feel rather than a three-dimensional feel. Still very much the prevailing style. I mean, seriously, look at the look at the tiles on a Windows interface, whether it be on your Windows Phone or on Windows 10 on the computer. Look at the graphic user interface or GUI design on your iPhone. It's all flat design. interesting the way in which to get this text to stand out against the background. They've put it in a text box, but that box has got a bit of opacity behind it, so you can still see the image behind. Was this one, because the background's so dark, they've not felt the need to bother. Right, anything else we can talk about? I think that pretty much comprehensively covers those pages, I think. It's interesting, in this text box goes all the way to the edge of the page, whereas these ones don't. Not entirely sure why. Yeah, I think that's about it, really. Okay, so that covers these pages, and subsequent videos will look at the remaining pages. See you in the next one.